to dive right into this topic. But before we begin, as you all know, we love to start things off with an icebreaker as folks trickle in. This icebreaker, I'm really curious. I think we have about 25 days left until 2023, which is so scary to think about. As 2022 is nearing to an end, I'd love to know from our expert panelists today that you see here, what is one New Year's resolution that you have coming up that you want to accomplish? We'll start things off with Patricia.
She's starting things off with me because I was the one that griped about this question. Just so everyone knows, I'm usually the person in the family that's like, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I'm not going to go buy the gym membership. But I was talking to my husband around a similar topic. I don't think we refer to it as New Year's resolutions. But I was telling him, I was like, this year was, it was a crazy year for me professionally. And I have a 1.5-year-old. And, karma's tough because I gave birth to myself. And so she is loud and obnoxious and very bossy. And I love it. But I very much prioritize a lot of professionalisms this year. And so I told him, I was like, I'm going to say, like, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the Shonda Rhimes TED Talk, my year of saying yes. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. So this year will be my year of saying yes to family outings and gatherings and be a little more present at home.
Love that.
Awesome.
Mark, do you want to go next?
Is it bad to say I don't do New Year's resolutions?
Not at all. No, that's the thing. I want to hear if you do
know.
it, if you don't do it. Some people don't believe in it because they're like, it's going to go away after like January 2nd. I'm not going to keep it up.
Yeah, I just have never really done them. I don't know why. It's just wasn't big with my family, so I've never really. I've heard of all the hype, but not participated.
Have a Sandy.
I'll go.
Okay.
So I'm on a personal side. I try to just kind of stick to a schedule and things like that. So but for work, I have a New Year's resolution, and it's to have comp plans in place, all dialed in before we actually start January 1st. So,
whoa, that's like every revenue.
I've been working at it since I don't know, August, I think so. Anyway.
Hey, well, that's a massive shout out to your team. If you work with Sandy, you're gonna get comp plans on time.
It was the first time in my career. Don't get me wrong, like seriously. So.
And last but not least.
Yeah, I'm in the boat with Mark. I don't really commit to some of that stuff. But if I had to pick one, I would say I've got family in Montenegro, and I definitely want to see him more. So I'm in Patty's bucket there. More family. Things go by so fast. So it's important to do that.
Absolutely. I think my resolution, not really a resolution, you're right, I don't really believe in them, but my goal for next year is to travel more. So that's what I want to do, travel more. All right, well, thank you for sharing. Let's get started on today's topic, Ghosted No More, top personalization strategies of your customer obsessed sellers. But before we begin, I'm going to say a few words about MSP. I am Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at Modern Sales Pros. And for those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them to see around corners they may not know about. We do this through live sessions like the one you're at today, our online forum, and our quarterly summits, and we're starting to get back into in-person events, so stay tuned. We might come to a city near you. Speaking of our summits, we have a next summit next month, the Modern Sales Pros Revenue Excellence Summit, the Mega SKO, and we're taking things to space. It's on January 24th, 2026. We have over 20 plus events, 5,000 Modern Sales Pros in attendance, and 60 plus high caliber speakers. You'll hear from leaders at Drift, SalesLoft, Lean Data, Stage 2 Capital, plus so much more. You don't want to miss out. We are starting things off next year, so I'm going to drop the registration link. Be sure to get your tickets. It's a free virtual event. And Quick housekeeping notes before I talk about our sponsor today. This event is being recorded, so if you have a colleague or friend that couldn't make it, don't worry, this event is recorded and will be made available on the MSP website before the end of the day. And if you have a question for our expert panelists that you see here, please use the Q&A chat at the top right-hand corner or the chat, and also let us know where you're calling in from. Now, today's event wouldn't be made possible without our sponsor today, RollWorks. RollWorks is a division of NextRoll. They offer ambitious B2B companies an account-based platform to align their marketing and sales team and confidently grow revenue. Powered by data and machine learning, RollWorks solution addresses the need of organizations large and small, for those with best-in-class ABM programs to those just beginning their exploration. I'm going to drop their link in the chat to learn more about RollWorks. Now, enough about me. I'm going to pass it off to our awesome panelists today, starting with Sandy to do quick introductions, and I'll come back for wrap up. Sandy, kick it off.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Super honored to be here. Great team to chat about today. I'm Sandy Robinson, Vice President of Revenue Operations at Nimbus. We provide core and digital banking solutions for banks and credit unions. So I support the sales, marketing, CS teams, implementation, revenue enablement, revenue operations, everything, commissions, forecasting, all the fun stuff. So started on the sales side way back in the day selling Yellow Pages. So I've kind of held different roles along the years, and certainly excited to talk today with you guys. So first up here, Danilo, if you can give a few words about an intro here.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. Happy to be here. At RollWorks, we just had an amazing intro here from Angelica, so I won't dive into that area, but I head up the sales development team at RollWorks. We've got 20, 30 and growing SDRs. I've been in this space for nearly about 15 to 20 years. So I love the sales development area. I'm always interested in networking and sharing best practices. So definitely hit me up, and looking forward to today's session.
Awesome. Thank you, Danilo. Patricia, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself, be great.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. My name is Patricia. I also go by Patty or Pat Duchesne. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer over here at Postal. We're an offline engagement platform. We help HR professionals, sales professionals, and marketing professionals reach their prospects, customers, employees in a scalable but highly personalized way. Super excited to be here. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I am as well. Mark, if you can give us a little bit about yourself and Catalyst.
Yeah, I'm Mark Costaglo, CRO at Catalyst. And Catalyst is a platform that helps our customers use their customers to become a growth engine by helping with growth efficiency, retention, expansion, and advocacy. And super excited to be here. Super jealous that Pat gets to work with Eric Kostelnik every day, one of my favorite people in the world. So
I don't know what you need from him, but I'll make sure he knows that you said that.
Definitely. So I think it's great timing that we're having this conversation with the year rounding to an end. Everybody's aligning on their strategies. And, one of the things that I've always really thought about is, how can we really put the customer in the center of everything that we're doing, whether it's any sort of prospecting all along the sales journey, we should really be thinking about the customer first. And so this topic of customer obsession, I totally love it. So just wanted to tee off the discussion about how do we really think about embracing a philosophy of customer obsession, but being able to be adaptable with everything in the way it changes in today's market. So maybe Danilo, you want to share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm thinking about 2023, and the one thing that stands out, it's really going to come down to conversion ratios, right? It's one of those things where, if, you're looking at the top of the funnel, I know, there's a lot of nervousness out there around 2023, what it's going to bring and so forth. So, from a personalization perspective, we really need to think about it, in addition to the messaging, what is that approach going to be, right? And you talked about customer obsession. So how do you get to a point where you actually personalize that, or rather operationalize that, customer obsession, right? So, things that come to mind for me, when it comes to that is fit, timing, and then, the personalization piece is really around relevancy. And I think in a lot of instances, we've seen that take different forms, whether it's, website personalization, whether it's personalization when someone's reaching out. We use a gifting platform, definitely on board with that, and share some examples later. But also, there's that personalization approach when it comes to actually outbound outreach, right? So how do you get some of those pain points in a more proactive way versus expecting them to come to you, going to them, right? So that's a big piece of it. And I think the other component here that's going to be critical in the next year is really marketing and sales alignment. There's a lot of, we talk about multi-threading on the sales side. There's a lot of goodness and multi-threading that's happening on the marketing side of it as well, but we don't necessarily have that visibility. So getting, the two teams to align so that information is passed on seamlessly is going to be critical, I think, next year.
Definitely. And I think as you think about more highly personalized campaigns and approaches to reaching out to your customers, you really have to be conscious of that and making sure everything's tied together. So that way you do have an opportunity to scale, but it really feels super personalized. So does anybody else have anything to add to that?
Well, something that I was going to say is when I speak to people about how well they know their customers, very often we are operating under facts and data that we've collected 6-12 months prior. Like, we've identified our ICP, we know who we sell to, we know what their needs are. But we all look at ourselves and what we've had to do in the past 6 months and the macroeconomic climate that has been pushed on everyone, our prospects and customers included. Things have changed. And I think operationalizing how frequently you're going back to your customer base and understanding what matters to them, what KPIs they're tracking, what keeps them up at night, because that's changed for many, many companies. And understanding, what is it today is very different than what they were probably thinking about 6 months ago, and making sure that your product, your pitch, your sales process is adapted to that, I think is important. And that's kind of like remembering sales and marketing fundamentals. You do it once or twice and you're like, I got it set. You create all the decks. You got to do it like every season.
Yeah, it's definitely something that evolves like as fast as things move. I mean, something can be different, like literally in the next week, so setting up these processes, I think it's important also to think about the ability to iterate them. So they're not so hard coded and they're not so rooted in that you can't do what you're saying, make sure you have the ability to be agile with it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Patricia, did you want to talk a little bit about, some of the marketing focus?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think one of the big areas that we've invested in at Postal, and I will be fully transparent, I was a part of these programs in my previous employer, but I wasn't as close. And at Postal, it's a core focus, which is customer marketing. Like, we have a tremendous amount of respect for our customers, because I think it's really easy as a company to forget that literally the only reason you get to do what you do is because of them. And so if you don't really invest time into understanding their needs and understanding like what drives them, like, why are you doing any of this? It's a total waste of time. And I think that it's so important to invest as an organization into customer marketing and into customer retention and education plays, because it's a massive, massive part of your business. And it's ultimately what should be driving your product development and everything moving forward. So I just think when I think about 2023, customer marketing is a huge focus for us. We've created an early adopters program here at Postal. We also have an advisory program with a core set of our customers. And the whole purpose for all those things is not jazz hands for show. it's because we think we know, but we don't. Like, we're not our customers. And we've all been a part of companies who spin their wheels and build products and build pitches because they think they know best. And it's always kind of a train wreck. So I think investing in customer marketing is a big thing for 2023.
That's great. I love it. It's just really tying the full customer life cycle, right? Pulling it all together from lead through continuation.
Yeah, I mean, customer marketing has a direct impact on top of funnel.
Yep.
Like, and I think that that's a really easy connection to miss because it is after the sale. And sometimes you kind of just lob up the contract as a sales professional. You're like, oh, my job's done. But as a business, research and understanding, everyone, if you're in CS right now and you're listening to this, you're like, oh yeah, sales. They sign the contract and lob it over. But if you understand your customers, you should take that knowledge and you can acquire more and at a higher volume because you understand their needs more innately.
Definitely. And then that in turn helps you target new additional customers because you're learning so much about your existing customers.
Exactly.
So Mark, love to hear from you about customers' obsession in today's world with everything going on.
Yeah, I think we're at an interesting confluence of 4 things. One is the SaaS-based business model. The subscription economy is only about 20 years old. If you think about it, some of these enterprise contract life cycles have only experienced 3 or 4 renewals. And the importance of customers and what the customer looks like in that model is not nearly as well understood as the perpetual license model, which is 60 or 70 years old. And so I think that as we accelerate our understanding of what customers need in that subscription economy, that we're coming to some new realizations of things that we need to do differently. The second is the role of CS is only 20 years old as well. And I can go find 50 posts right now on how to start a cold call. I can't find one post. Well, actually, somebody finally heard me say this and did a post on what to do in a tough negotiations on a renewal where they're asking for a big discount. I'd argue that's the more important call that needs to be coached than the cold call, but it gets 1,000th of the attention. And so I think that we're starting to see an acceleration of the CS role and its importance in this new economy. The third is there's this ubiquity now of data warehousing where we have all of this rich information about how customers and users are getting value out of our product, but few companies have figured out how to get value out of that data set. And it's so messy and weird and hard to access, and the resources are so small that you just can't get into it. So you have to figure that out. And then lastly, the current economic conditions are demanding cheaper, easier, faster, and less risky growth vectors. And so when you add all that up, there's like this, that's where we're at right now. And if you don't see that your customer is the answer to the problems that arise in the confluence of those 4 things, then you might need to go out of the subscription-based business and into the old school-based businesses where you sell something once and you come back a couple of years later and sell some more pencils to them. And so, I think that that's the reality that we live in. I think that the only answer is our customers. And I think that right now, there's a lot of companies that are paying lip service to how customers are so important to them, how they're maniacally obsessed with customers, yet they celebrate every time an AE's book of business goes down in accounts because those reps will get more time with those accounts, which will be more revenue. But then the other side of that coin is those same executives celebrate giving a CSM more accounts, which means less time with their customers, but they expect the same level of retention and more expansion revenue. Those 2 things can't exist in the world at the same time, but that's how most executives are making a decision. And I think it clearly shows a misunderstanding of where we're at in the world right now.
Yeah, there's a lot there, Mark, that definitely you're bringing up. I mean, I think that, just to your last point, creating alignment and objectives, right? So you're not having those competing objectives that you're talking about is really important with your team, so they understand, really what it is that they're focusing on. That one objective is not competing with the other. Danilo, I think you were going to say something there. You look like you're about to chime in.
Yeah, no, I completely
Or was
agree.
it more? Was it this?
It was enjoying the beer. No, no, I agree with Mark. I think there's a lot of brute force being applied, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just a complete shift in dynamics now to really making sure that you're personalizing your go-to-market strategy, right? We use Postal. We use a number of different technologies, and it's all about modifying our process to meet the customer where they are versus dictating where they need to be able to use your solution, right? So you just got to be a lot more nimble these days, and meet the customer where they are versus setting certain rigorous expectations and of what an ideal infrastructure needs to look like to support your solution, right?
So definitely, and before we move on a little bit more to real personalization, anything you guys are doubling down on for 2023 that you're really just running for?
I can go ahead and take that. We spent 2 full days locked in conference rooms last week. So I am a survivor of annual planning. Thank you, everybody. But one of the things that we all came out of that meeting feeling very confident in was like our new, I wouldn't say new, but I would say it's we all shook hands and agreed that everybody was going to do their part when it came to ABM programs in 2023. ABM was something that we introduced more rigorously in Q3 and Q4 of this year. And I think we'd done it very haphazardly. I think we'd done it the way many companies would think of ABM, and just kind of like, oh, we found a set of accounts and we're going to hit them with some outreach or sales loft sequences and call it a day. But it was wild to see what coordination between account executives, SDRs, and marketing could lead, and executives. So we incorporated exec reach out at specific points, and that was something that we all walked away, planning and saying like, we're going to do this, and this is going to be part of our ongoing marketing and sales program. Like this is now officially part of our funnel. This is not a haphazard, kind of like, oh, we should just do this. Somebody has a little bit of bandwidth. So that's a massive focus for us.
Wow, that's great. I mean, that's great to have that alignment too, and just really have that, just all in approach. So excellent. There's some questions here in the chat for Mark. What's the biggest mistake, given your background, that you see people make as it relates to personalization?
It's funny. I think that personalization is a tricky weapon. I think it has this very steep law of diminishing returns, meaning that, if you don't do it, you suffer. There's a point at which if you do it at a certain level, you get amazing returns. And then the minute that you go over that level of personalization, you get a very steep decline on productivity, and the amount of time to do it just never pays off. And so the biggest thing I see is that companies don't measure enough how much personalization that they need to do to find when that law of diminishing return kicks in, and you're actually hurting your SDR team or your prospecting AEs by encouraging them to do more and more personalization at the expense of actual productivity and results. And so that's the number one thing. At Catalyst, the first thing I did when I came in is I made sure that our pipeline production was good. We had a 6-week pipeline push, and that 6 weeks, we had our 6 best weeks of pipeline production in the history of the company. I wouldn't say I came in here with some kind of wizard or anything. All I did was define real clearly, or actually my reps helped me define really clearly, what was the one piece of personalization that seemed to be making a difference. For our target market, oddly enough, it was something that I thought wouldn't work. And then I told my team not to do, that we went back to after a few days, because it was what I was doing was so bad. It was taking a hobby and making a parallel of that hobby to customer success and retention and expansion. I have sequences right now that have 80% open rates and 25% reply rates because of that bit of personalization. Anything we do after that actually hurts the productivity of the team and causes the results to go down. So we do 1 or 2 sentences and that's about it. And so that's the thing. There's also like 2 ways of personalization, Sandy. There's the I don't know you, and so I'm going to try to say something to get you to be okay with. The other one is the opposite way, which I think is a much more customer centric way, which is I'm going to find what attributes some of my customers have right now in small pockets that I know you have, and therefore I will be automatically relevant and personalized because I'm shooting the bullet at the right target. And I always tell people this all the time, like, Sandy, do you know what silver bullets kill best?
Any bullet, right?
A silver bullet kills werewolves best.
Yeah.
And none of us are out here shooting werewolves. We just kill regular old monsters every day. So regular old bullets will do. So quit trying to find the silver bullet, pick up a gun, put a regular bullet in it and shoot. And so I think that that's really important is we can find good bullets in our customers to load our prospecting guns with. And then that will make sure that we're firing at the right target. So that would be the I think a big meta point in all this is sometimes we start with the unknown, hoping that the carrot is nice enough, rather than going to the neighborhood where we sold a ton of candy bars last year in order to go on the field trip. And so we're probably going to sell a bunch of candy bars again this year.
Yeah, and those personalized messages, they just mean so much more, right? They fight through all the noise that's out there, and we all know what that noise looks like, and just really being able to reach people on a personal level. I love it.
Well, my assumption is that everyone here gets a ton of prospecting, emails, LinkedIn messages, phone calls, text messages are a favorite. The ones that always stand out aren't the ones that happen to know I have a kid or happen to know that I have a very ancient old pug, but it's the ones that like know how I feel in that moment. They know what a CRO at a Series B startup feels like right now in Q4. It's almost because it's a little bit invasive, but that's why it stands out. And especially when they can connect their product to a potential solution or a fix to one of my feelings. I think that's the type of personalization. If you're selling, I would say like VP and above, I would aim, if you can do that at scale, I would aim there all day versus the other type of personalization that Mark was talking to, which is kind of finding, a commonality or something kind of on their Instagram or their LinkedIn that you can run with.
Yeah, one other thing that I was going to add to what Mark was saying is you got to absolutely find that balance. But, the other piece of this is, the beauty of tools like Outreach, but also the negative aspect of it is that, you can rely on those to kind of just, work through the different steps, right, or sequence, and not, add anything to it, right? So what we do here internally from a sales development perspective is we rely heavily on the signals that we get from Outreach, for example, right? So we'll look at those opens, we'll look at those clicks, start to look at those additional data points, and then terminate some of those sequences and go into a one-off approach there, to essentially push them over the fence, so to speak, right? So that's where we'll insert gifting. We'll do extra LinkedIn steps, extra calls and so forth. So it's not a one and done. It's a multitude of different steps and nurture, stages, if you will.
And if you don't know what works, you can test it. I mean, every technology out there lets you A/B test, and you don't have to A/B test the whole thing. You can A/B test just one step.
Definitely. And even, just taking a sales team or SDR team and focusing on, a certain, whether it's a role, a persona, and, really working through that and coaching the calls and just the aspects that kind of support that when you're thinking about the full picture. Anytime that we've implemented something that's highly customized, it comes with a full playbook, right? So, from the personas, from the tactics, what are we going to do? What are we going to say? Is it going to be, a sequence? Are we going to send them something, whatever it is, but then having that coaching element to follow up with it and really maximize that, so you can then repeat it maybe for the next sort of initiative, whatever it might be, and just use that as kind of like your playbook.
Mm-hmm.
So just moving on here. So I was trying to check the chat, make sure I'm keeping up on everything here. We're talking about, I think we've got a little bit into this, but just in terms of what why is intent, and you mentioned it a little bit, Patty, with your, with understanding your feelings and everything like that, but really, maybe if we can dive a little deeper into intent, and how to really think about that as you are implementing these strategies. So who wants to, somebody want to jump in first, or Mark or Danilo?
I can get us kicked off. I mean, the big thing, you hear this a lot, right? That buyers are going to make a decision, 70% of the way before they even speak to a sales rep, right? So, the idea here is to make sure that, as you're going after organizations, that you have a sense for, what they're looking for, right? And there's some great, ways of doing it, right? We actually have, as part of our solution, a keyword intent as well as a category intent, right? So the two differences there, when you're looking at a category intent, you're looking at a more established, kind of a commoditized market, if you will. Keyword might be, on the other extreme, for companies that are just out the market with a brand new product that maybe doesn't fit some sort of a mold, right? That they, may not be aware of, right? And then you've got everything in between. So it's almost comes down to almost like a Venn diagram of, the two intersections, right? Between keyword and category intent. But it's definitely a key, component to any sort of ABM platform or strategy, knowing, what accounts are in market, right? They may or may not be engaging with your brand, but understanding that is crucial, because also look at, who's looking at your competitors there as well. Or for that matter, we also look at ecosystem, technology that's related but not quite tied to us. So that way we can understand potential integrations and a few other aspects of it as well.
Mm-hmm. I think the keyword versus categorization thing is really important. We're an emerging market, so we love keywords because it also tells us, if we can identify the right persona inside this account, how they're thinking about our technology. And we can adapt our language to meet them where they are at in their, in their maturity of what I would, consider our market. So that is super important. There's nothing worse for a revenue leader, in my opinion, than having a CEO say, we could sell to anyone. Everyone can be our customer. Because it's like, well, who the hell do we go to then? Like, you can't just spray and pray. And so intent is one of those things that does a bit of legwork for you. It doesn't do everything by all means, but why wouldn't you take the help? And why wouldn't you take the insider knowledge of oh, this is how they're trying to search for fixes to this problem. This is how they think about it. Whether it's, positioning it oh, I'm trying to save, the whole, are they trying to save money or trying to make money? Even that little switch can make a big difference.
Intent is a strange thing too. It's, what the greatest intent signal is? They sign the contract. You know what it is before that? They're willing to book some meetings to talk to you. You know what it is before that? They're willing to book an initial meeting with you to discuss. You know what it is before that? They open and read your emails. You know what it is before that? They open up and download content from marketing. You know what it is before that? Are they searching for it on websites? So there's a lot of intent that surfaces all throughout the thing. I would argue that if you need to go all the way to keywords and all the way to snooping on what websites people are on and stuff like that to show intent, maybe you need to adjust how impactful the other stuff that you're doing is. And I'm saying, listen, I have friends that work at 6 Sense and Demand Base, and I think those are amazing technologies that kind of let you peek behind the curtain of what the buyer is doing prior to them engaging you, which can be super useful and valuable. But I think that if you have a widely valuable product and you have a good product market fit and you have differentiation and you have good messaging, I think we can make it work at the SDR reaching out cold to somebody level. And so, I might be a little bit of a old curmudgeon, get off the lawn dude in that way. But like, I just think that if you got a good product and you got good messaging and your team is working in a disciplined way, and that, to Patty's point earlier, you're doing good testing and measurement, I think that you can figure out how to turn that little bit later in the funnel intent into just as good results. I mean, in my 8 years at Outreach, we never had intent signals. Our intent was people were opening and clicking on the emails that we were sending them. And then we figured out how to make sure that they converted at a high rate into deals.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up great points. I just look at it as I love the extra information if I can narrow it down. If I know somebody is clicking around on our website, it really works, I think, well, if you have a clearly defined account base. So like, we know who we're calling on. We're calling on banks and credit unions. So we have a lot of information about them. So, in our systems, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say what systems or not, but we have a prospecting tool, and in that tool, the accounts are there from Salesforce. So a rep will get a notification if somebody that's assigned to them is like searching, because we have our intent signals set up. So to me, it's just like an extra leg to be able to go, oh, I did send them an email before. It's in my cadence. Let me just try to give them a buzz on their cell phone. So it just gives a little bit more, it's not perfect. It's directional, I think.
I think that's a good way to put it, Sandy. Directional.
Yeah, I just think it doesn't hurt, and a lot of these tools actually come with it, or it's an add-on. And we're obviously going into Web 3.0 land and metaverse and things like that. So things are like literally changing by the day. So any sort of technology, depending on where you are as an organization, but if you are clearly defined and you do have your metrics and your cadence maybe in a different place in the life cycle of your business and your growth, less in startup mode and more in matures. And so you may not need that. For sure. So in terms of intent, anybody have any additional comments on intent?
Get off the lawn. Get off my lawn.
There's a lot of curmudgeon over there.
I'll add one more thing. I mean, I think to me, intent is definitely super important, because it is a signal. And, at the end of the day, I'm looking at propensity for someone to reply, right? And so, yes, you might have a situation where, you have good messaging, you get a response, but is that response going to be like, sure, let's talk now? Or is it going to be, sure, let's talk in 6 months? So the intent piece to me, dictates a little bit more on the timing aspect of it. But as I look at the entire market, though, the big thing to me is that all of that represents probably about 10%. Mm-hmm. So, going back to Mark's point, you're definitely going to be able to take advantage of those signals. You're definitely going to take advantage of the signals directly with your brand. But outside of that, you do have to have a strong outbound strategy, right? Like, maybe that 10% represents 50% of your pipeline, but where are you going to get the rest, right? So a strong outbound motion is definitely critical as well. So from that perspective, figure out what your approach is going to be. And that could be a number of different approaches, right? I'll tell you, we're going to be using Postal heavily next year. So doing a little bit of a plug there for that product.
Love that. Thank you.
But, you just definitely need to, beyond good messaging, figure out what that strategy is going to be. We also eat our own cooking, so we're going to be doing ads to warm these accounts up, bring them from that unaware stage to more of an aware stage. So they have that brand recognition and so forth. So think about outbound. Outbound is going to be a big, big strategy next year.
But isn't that kind of, I mean, that's what we should always be doing is like, you can't put all your cookies in one, or what is it? Eggs, not cookies. Clearly I'm on the holiday diet. But you can't put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, it's no longer is it like, do outbound in a silo, do digital in a silo, do offline in a silo. It's like omni-channel is the way of the future. And like a lot of us are strapped for budget and headcount. And so you want to optimize every touch point. And so using them together usually results in the highest impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd 100% agree with that, Patty. I mean, the biggest thing to me is just, that has been typically in a silo, right? It's not until the
historically,
last
absolutely.
few years where people are like, hey, we got to take advantage of all these channels, right? And make sure that, it's not just a handoff from marketing to sales, but the marketing plays a role once that handoff is done and completed, right? We still might have some high engagers that are opening and clicking on our outreach emails, but for some reason they don't reply. How do we get them over the fence, right? What role does marketing play at that point to come back in and help us push those over the fence, so to speak, right? But yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's all back to, I mean, we talked about testing and measuring, and historically we always measured in silos and individual channels. And now it's like, oh my God, we have to measure a cross channel performance through these very complicated campaigns. And so just our jobs are just getting a little bit more complex, but they're hopefully getting a little bit more effective.
Yeah, and the whole, marketing attribution as well. I mean, that's really changing by the day, right? So having to be able to demonstrate your influence along the full buying journey, right? Versus just, what went into the funnel and what comes out, first and last touch attribution is really, we need to be thinking about exactly what you're saying is, throughout the whole journey, they may have clicked on that email, not opened it. However, you did provide some sort of influence potentially there if you're putting together that, omni-channel, multi-channel strategy for all of your personalization. So that kind of leads into account-based marketing. I know, Danilo, you had, I don't know who wants to start here, or Mark, but account-based, if you have any stories or thoughts or ideas on a strategy to turn key prospects into key accounts. So we always have those, what are your strategic accounts? What are your top 10 or your elephants, or, everything like that. So how do we really take these strategic accounts or prospects and turn them into accounts?
Yeah, I can tell a couple of stories around that to start. So listen, I think ABM is the most difficult thing to pull off in all of business right now. I think that it must align multiple levels across different departments. You have to have your event marketer, plus your content marketer, plus your whatever other marketer, plus your SDR, plus your AE, plus, somebody on the backside of a CSM that's doing it with customers in those accounts. So it is an extremely complex cross-departmental play that requires everyone playing their part. It's weird. I'll admit I was a band geek in high school, and no matter how well I played my part, if I was perfectly in tune and did everything right, if everyone else was out of tune, my part didn't sound good. And that's how ABM works, is you can't individually do your part right if other people aren't doing their part right and play a cohesive, good sounding tune. You just can't do it. And so what it requires, I think, the linchpin in all of it is the AE sales leader. If the AE sales leader isn't going to, I'm going to use a bad word here, force their AEs to participate, then there's no reason to do ABM, because it's not ABM. And so I'll give you, an example that we did at Outreach, where we had an event that we needed to drive people to in order to drive pipeline on a specific type of product. So what do? We set up some content marketing with a couple blogs, an infographic or something like that had a bunch of that stuff. Event marketing set up the event. The general marketing function sent out a whole bunch of marketing plays around, doing, come to the event. The SDRs, of course, because they can easily set meetings for that, they kind of glom on and they do their thing. Guess where every time we did that outreach, the whole train stopped? The AEs. There'd be 2 or 3 of them that would send out a handful of emails. The rest, we would be like, can you do this? And then the next week, can you please do this? And the next week, do this. And the next week, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you. And the week after that is like, F you, we're never doing this again because y'all suck, right? And that's like the general down spiral to hell of ABM. So rather than do that, I started doing it. Listen, AEs can choose not to participate. We're going to make them participate. And so what we started doing is we started saying, all right, we're going to get our going to be better on our marketing list. And anybody that meets that parameters will be automatically put into a sequence that's fully automated on behalf of the AEs. And guess what happened when we did that? We pissed off a few people because they were like, oh, I was at this deal going and you screwed it up. Oh, this is somebody I was about to close and you made it seem like I've never talked to them. You know what else happened? We effing crushed pipeline on that thing. So many deals, it didn't matter if we messed up a deal. And so that's what I start to believe in is like AEs are not going to do it. And if AEs are going to be the breakage point, then I'm going to do it for them. And I'll be their babysitter and I'll be their fun little uncle that makes them do all the stuff that they don't want to do. Actually, fun uncle is probably the bad thing. I'm the mean dad that makes them eat their vegetables and they can't get off the table until they've done it. And you know what? So I'm going to just do it for you. And once we started doing that kind of stuff, we had a major impact. And guess what happened? Over time, they started to realize my contributions do matter to this. I can't just hope I get stuff from marketing. I need to leverage marketing to feed myself. And so that's one big lesson that I learned along the way is I think the AE leader is typically the person that's causing most ABM initiatives to fail. And they have to get their troops in order and start to force them to do what their part of the program is. Boom. How's that? Sound good?
I think that storyline hit home for a lot of us. I would totally agree. I will say that forcing is something that every sales leader does, and they love to be hated for it. We've opened up, I would say, the curtain a little bit here at Postal, and we have explained very, very clearly why we're doing the programs we're doing to the account executives. So when they push back, we're like, well, let's go back to why we said we would do this. And usually the remembering why we started it gets them back on the train. I'm not saying it's perfect. I was a sales rep once too, and I thought I was the smartest person in the room. However, I will say giving sales reps a little bit of understanding as to why you do programs the way you do makes a massive difference. It also can give them, they can also have really good ideas. And maybe, when you're trying to create personalization at scale, Mark, then you might have a better idea than you and running with hobbies or something like that. But I think every sales leader has forced one part of their team at some point to do something they didn't want to do in order to make the program.
I think you made a great point with the why, right? And also just getting their feedback on the process. So something that I've found, and there was a lot of pain when I was on the other side as a sales leader and a salesperson, is like, okay, you want me to do a thing, but it's difficult to do and it's a pain and I hate doing it. So it's the administrative activities. So to the extent that, you can get feedback, automate it. If they tell you something, so like for us, if an AE bothers to come to me and be like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing you want me to do, but it's doing this, or what if you did this? We will listen and we'll actually make the change, obviously as long as it doesn't break other things. So getting their feedback. So the why, like you said, like, why are we doing it? But also getting their input on the actual doing it. Because sometimes it is a pain. Like if you don't have systems connected or they're entering some stuff in a spreadsheet or something like that.
Wow.
And it's a cluster.
Spreadsheet-based ABMs.
I've seen it all. So think about that on the other end is, make it easy as possible for them to do. So, you don't have to browbeat them. And then at the end of the day, if you have to browbeat them, you have to, but that's just where my thoughts go, because it's just human behavior, right? They have to want to do it, and they have to see benefit out of it. Like, what's in it for them? Like, are they going to close deals from it? Like, what does this mean? Can it be gamified? They love that. They love winning, and all this. So maybe there's some opportunity there. There's some really cool stuff out there.
Any process that has the step of, and we'll just ask the reps to, is doomed to failure. Anytime that's a step in your process, might as well not make a process.
That's why automation's beautiful sometimes.
Necessary.
It is. And I'll echo what Patty said earlier, because you were in a room for you said 2 days, and
Yes.
you emerged committed and tied at the hip with your marketing organization. I think that's key, right? I think the biggest part of this is just, commitment and accountability to each other, right? And then, Sandy, you mentioned this earlier in terms of pilots, right? So, just get started. I mean, Mark made some good points about, like, hey, this is not easy. It's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of parts and everything, but, don't let that prevent you from, tackling it, right? If you've got that commitment and you got that trust, just get started and start doing some pilots. We had little simple things that we did. I'll give you one example of, high engagers in outreach that we were not able to move over the fence. And then we had a lot of people that were, for example, out of office, so what did marketing do? They did a high engagers kit, and they did a, what I call a soup campaign. They called it a little more eloquently a, wellness kit that they sent out to them after our outreach, wrapped up, and we got a ton of responses. So it's just a matter of just coordinating some of those efforts internally, and figure out little bite-sized things that you can do to push the needle. A lot of those little small things add up quickly.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, just because I don't think there's been enough emphasis on this, is like, get your executives involved for valuable prospects and high intent or what you deem are like really exceptional companies and ICPs. Get your execs involved. I think there's almost no exec right now, especially, who would say no to individualized outreach.
Love it. Really, really great conversation, guys. I think there were a lot of points here. I'm just going to check the chat and see if we have anybody. I think we have a question in the chat from Linda about recommended, what companies do we recommend for tracking intent signals?
I got to plug us, obviously. So if you weren't aware of it, Linda, RollWorks offers both. Reach out to us. We'd love to talk.
Great. Any closing thoughts here? You guys maybe, go ahead, Mark.
Don't work for me unless you want to work for an old man.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think, if you guys, just for me, some takeaways here besides that, and the picture of the curmudgeon here that you have baked in my brain, is really just a great discussion. A couple takeaways that I have is just really with the personalization. I just love, I love everything that group was talking about, but more specifically, just, how can we track it, and how can we really focus in on our customers that are already part of, our organization, and understand, what's going on with them, so we can learn about that and, bring it to our prospects. Any other takeaways that you guys have, Danilo, from today?
I mean, my main thing I would say for next year is just focus. You know what I mean? Really on where you think your pipeline, your revenue, all that is going to come from. And then, second thing I would say is coordinate efforts, cross-functionally.
Ruthless prioritization is going to be huge next year. I think everyone's going to have to be very smart with how they spend their time, how they spend their resources. I would say my takeaway that I would leave everyone with is I can't emphasize enough how important it is to introduce like a cadence in which you go back to your customers and reinvestigate what it is that they find value in your product, how they define return on investment, how they describe your product and its impact to others. I think that doing that on a quarterly basis probably makes sense for most companies right now. And I think it's one of those things that it's kind of like a set it and forget it. So reintroducing that next year, I would say would be my takeaway.
Mark, any closing thoughts?
No, I just think that we're in a changing world, and the rules that we played the game by just 6 months ago are drastically different than the rules by which the game is currently being played. And the score that most of us were looking at on the scoreboard got drastically adjusted in that time period. And if you aren't rethinking what you're doing in a drastic way and looking for cheaper, easier, faster, and less risky ways to grow your business, then I think that you're going to find that you get an opportunity to figure that out at your next job. So be open-minded, start thinking, and start looking, because that's what the current market conditions are dictating.
I love it. I love it. And something I heard everybody say, and in almost every meeting this comes up, I hear the word alignment. And so I think every one of you guys hit on it. Alignment across your org, executive alignment, not just with marketing, sales, but with customer success, anybody who really touches that customer journey. And that will really help to solidify your plans, initiatives, and processes and bring everything together. So Angelica, I think it's back to you.
I'm back. Thank you everyone for attending, and big thank you to our panelists today, Danilo, Matt, Mark, Patty, Sandy. Thank you for your time and your expertise and insights. It was so valuable. And thank you everyone for attending. Just a reminder that the key takeaways and the recording will be made available on the MSP website shortly. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you at the next event. Thank you everyone, and have a great day.
All right. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.